what you're growing. And really, it's a situation that in our view needs to change. So ultimately, this question sort of is in place. Without the coffee producer, there really is no future in coffee. We just simply cannot continue to benchmark the prices that we pay for coffee alongside prices that were paid 20 to 30 years ago if we want to still have coffee to buy in 20 years' time. This system continues to prioritise the buyer in an industry that's reliant on the producer. Without the producer, we have no industry. So when it came to us setting up our business, we kind of came into it with this knowledge. My background is in sustainable development. That's what I kind of studied at university, and my degree was focused on smallholder farming communities in Kenya and how they've been impacted by fair trade. So we sort of came into starting our business with the knowledge of the sea market, the kind of negatives to that method of procurement. Essentially, we knew that we had to sort of work differently. Our view is that the whole narrative of coffee and the coffee producer, it needs to change. It's our belief that to guarantee quality coffee in the years to come, it is absolutely necessary to build principles of sustainability and social and environmental responsibility into our approach to buying coffee now. Our buying relationships are centred around taking the commodity out of the transaction, essentially humanising the supply chain. Producers simply must access more from the supply chain that they help to prop up. Their crop and craft has to be accurately valued, and producer agency is crucial to keeping coffee farmers alive. We think it's absolutely imperative that producers are empowered to understand the role that they play within the supply chain, which at the moment it's far too easy to keep them marginalised from the buyer and from the kind of final place that their product ends up being consumed. Without that visibility over how consumers value what they grow, how can producers understand the role that they play and value their contribution to the industry? We've found things like imagery to be really, really important. Conversations that we have both in buying trips, but also the contact that we maintain throughout the year. We find it is a common theme that when things like even language, like the language of smallholder, when you sort of refer to a farmer as a smallholder, they don't feel kind of empowered, and their position is often undermined. They don't look at themselves as small business owners, which is essentially what they are, just like myself, sort of small business entrepreneurs. And that's kind of what we try to sort of take into account within the relationships that we curate across our producing partner base. Imagery is super important. The really nice image that you see on the right is taken from a book that's going to be released towards the end of this year called Coffee, Milk, Blood, which has been in writing from one of our partners that we work with for the last 3 years. And it's essentially sort of sharing insight into the impact that colonialism has had on a lot of kind of coffee producing nations, and how that mindset continues to be at play today in relationships that are set up today. So it's really about sort of changing that producer narrative and sort of increasing the agency that those producers have within their own transaction, making them masters of their own destiny. So how do we do things differently at North Star? Ultimately, we absolutely don't sort of apply a one-size-fits-all model. I think the kind of knowledge that we've built up over the last 8 years is that every single relationship requires a slightly different way of working. Everyone has different needs. 4 approaches that we do have in place across all of the relationships that we have curated are the following. So we, in every coffee that we source, we have an outright price that's negotiated, and that's based on the quality of the coffee. So we pay absolutely no attention to the global sea market, and we only negotiate a price that we know covers the costs involved in producing the coffee and that has a profit incentivized by quality. So there's always a profitable transaction, and we increase the profit that we can apply based on how good the coffee is, which is, in our view, it's how we price up our coffee when we sell it to the end consumer. The average price that we paid last year was $4.20 per pound in comparison to the kind of global sea market price that was between $1.08 and $1.20 for last year. As a small business, we target smaller producers with our purchases in an effort to bring about more tangible impact and drive change. We very, very much, we're very aware that we are not the size of a larger sort of commercial roastery, and the impact that we have, the potential to kind of put in place is a lot smaller. We don't have as much money to spend. We're not buying as much volume of coffee, so we try to make our purchases as impactful as possible by sort of being quite selective with producers that may not have had access to the market to date. We don't go to the kind of the hero producers that have built their reputation over the previous years. We try to sort of find producers who perhaps been denied access to the supply chain in previous years.